don't know much, but I know this much. Graham Potter has been sacked by Chelsea FC. Todd Boehly and the consortium have given Graham Potter his P45 and he's been given his marching orders, sent on his way after an awful tenure at Chelsea FC. One of the worst I can remember. One of the worst managerial reigns I can recall. It has been nothing other than shambolic from Graham Potter. And at the end of the day, this is a results-based business and Graham has not got the results by any stretch. And I feel like the hand was forced after losing 2-0 at home to Aston Villa. Aston Villa leapfrogged Chelsea. Chelsea sit 11th. And it has just been a season where we have reached new low after new low. There have been some shocking managers. There have been a lot of bad decisions made at my time supporting Chelsea. But this Graham Potter tenure, honestly, it has been incredibly bizarre. Chelsea, since being taken over, since having this new ownership, everything has been a circus. The money coming in, the Thomas Tuchel getting sacked, having to go to Champions League games via bus. It's just been bizarre all round. The money spent, the contracts, it's been absolutely absurd. And I feel like we wanted to steady the ship. I feel like even the new ownership, they were aware with all this influx of players and all of these changes, and there's rumours that Chelsea are going to move to a new stadium. I feel like we wanted to steady the ship and we wanted a manager, we wanted a long-term project, someone we could trust who was going to build and work with this team, with this new regime. But it has gone so badly that the trigger just simply had to get pulled. Graham Potter has won 11, 12 games out of the 31 he's been in charge. He's picked up 1.27 points per game. That's his average. That's like a draw and some change. That's nothing. That is dead. I'm sorry. I understand the influx of players. I understand it's almost too much to work with. I also feel like this job is doomed for most managers. I only feel like a finite amount of managers would be able to deal with this pressure, this ego, these high stakes, this money. Graham has been manager at Brighton, and before that, some team in 9th division of Swedish football. Like, I just feel like he has not really had this experience, this pressure, and it showed ultimately. It really showed. You saw it in the press conferences, you saw it on the touchline. I felt like his best way to approach this job and the craziness around it was just to be very casual and to just sort of get everything into perspective, which I can appreciate. But when you're not getting the results, you're casual and the apathy towards losing games. So, like, losing so many home games. We lost to Southampton, bottom of the table. Villa. We've just lost so many games this season to opposition that are so average or below average and nowhere near where Chelsea should be. But these teams have been beating us and just making it look easy. We've been making teams look like the Galacticos. We have been so average and below average as a team in our football, in our ability to score goals, and it's just gotten beyond bad. And the decision had to be made. It's the right decision. I don't like to wish any man out of employment. There's a cost of living crisis, but Graham, on your 12 million a year or whatever deal that you strike, whatever deal is agreed mutually between you and the consortium, I'm sure you will do just fine. But it was time to go. Ultimately, the consortium, Todd Boehly and his gang, have been more than fair. I have to admit, they have been more than fair. Even though they've been bizarre in the way that they've acquired players, left, right and centre, splashing this money out, giving them huge contracts. Graham Potter was afforded time. He was given time to turn this around. There were so many warning signs here. There were so many signs that he got the backing from the ownership despite the poor run of form. And I felt like he really should have been galvanised by that and incentivized to turn it around. And of course, you can't make results go your way, but you can do an awful lot to help aid and to help work with the players that you've got to guarantee some better results. And ultimately, Graham just didn't do that. He kept juggling players. He kept playing players that weren't scoring goals. When you've got strikers around on the bench, he talks a big talk about being a tinker man, a man who would rotate the team. And he didn't rotate in key areas. It looked like there were so many elements of favouritism going on. And him trying to give assurances to certain players that really didn't deserve it. And I felt like ultimately he must have lost the dressing room overall. With the massive amount of players in that dressing room, it was going to be impossible to keep them all happy. And maybe he tried too hard to do so, and that ultimately cost him his job. I understand he was a man who wanted to, you know, big believer of emotional intelligence, getting to know the players. You had to scrap that in this case. You had to get out of your comfort zone here because you weren't going to get to know all these players. You needed to be ruthless. You need to play the players that were playing well, and that was it. And there were so many players. I mean, Kai Havertz, Cucurella, just to name those, I guess, are just a few players that got game time week in, week out that didn't deserve it. And I feel like that was a big mistake, and it was ultimately costly for Graham losing the dressing room, which is what is being reported that happened. Now, I think Graham Potter is a manager who could do a lot with less. I think when the pressure is not as high, when perhaps his team are the underdogs, I think Graham is probably a really good manager. I think what he did at Brighton was exceptional. He didn't have this mass amount of resources that he has at Chelsea. He didn't have some of the world's most coveted footballers coming in through the doors with these big egos and these expectations, these World Cup winners coming in, young talents with the ceiling so high. He didn't have that. He's never had that. And I think he will do well at another club that doesn't have these expectations, but Chelsea is a very particular job, and even more so now. We've got a reputation for sacking managers if we don't get the results, and that was never going to be a good fit. Chelsea and Graham Potter was such a strange relationship, and ultimately it's been over after 7 months, and after a run of such poor form, it's really no surprise. Chelsea need a big personality, a big name manager, a big character in the dressing room. We need someone with exceptionally high standards, and that wasn't Graham Potter. Now, I feel like the next step for Chelsea is key. It is massive because we can't afford to sack another manager within 12 months. I mean, that has got to be the goal at this point. Find a manager we're not going to sack within 12 months. I think that is the only way we can get out of this mess. But 11th place, out of the FA Cup, out of the Carling Cup, quarterfinals to Real Madrid, it is going to be a crazy end to the season. But I think obviously the ownership thought there was something to salvage from this season, whether it be Champions League, a run in the Champions League, whether it be a place in the Europa League. You know, at the end of the day, before Aston Villa, we were 5-6 points off of that, which wasn't unthinkable. But then after losing to Aston Villa, it just shows that any time there seems to be some ground we can make on any European place, we fall behind again, losing to Aston Villa and losing to an bang average team that shouldn't be getting any points away at Stamford Bridge. Guys, it has happened. I'm happy it's happened. I'm sure you guys are as well. It has not been a nice atmosphere around Chelsea. It has been getting more toxic and toxic every week. Every weekend we don't get the result we need. It has been piling on. And finally, a fresh break. I don't know what's going to happen here. Obviously, there are some managers around that are available that weren't available a few weeks ago. And that might change the climate. Who we acquire next, I don't know, but one thing is for sure, this is a bizarre football club, and it is just crazy following the ins and outs of this team and this squad and this entity that is Chelsea FC. But if it's nothing, it is 100% entertaining. Guys, let me know what you think. Who is the first manager you want to see? For me, it's got to be Julian Nagelsmann. I think that is a manager that I would have wanted perhaps when Frank Lampard got sacked. I thought he was would be a great man to fill and to be the next project for Chelsea. But we got Thomas Tuchel, and obviously we know how we feel about Thomas Tuchel and how happy we were with Thomas Tuchel's reign at Chelsea. But I think Julian Nagelsmann would be the best manager available. Not sure whether it will happen. Not sure any manager wants to touch Chelsea at the moment or at any point. So it is going to be difficult, but we can only hope it's onwards and upwards from here. Guys, let me know what you think. Leave a like on this video. This is a massive, massive day in Chelsea's history. Leave a comment in the comment box. I want to talk. I want to hear what you guys think about all of this. I mean, I'm pretty sure I know what you feel. And subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I think we're going to have to talk about who could potentially be the next manager and who is the best fit. I'll see you in the next one in a bit.